Hi, we are back in the kitchen for today's video because it is time for me to tell you what I learned in my 4th month of writing. Now, I'm already late with this because May somehow started like a week ago and I forgot to make this video. And tonight is one of my writing nights, so I'm supposed to be writing right now, but I thought let's do this video quickly and I'll do it whilst I'm cooking something, and then I am grouping tasks together, which is my way of, I was going to say my way of being efficient, but it's actually just my way of getting anything done. So on the cooking side, we are making a butternut squash soup. I've got a piece of squash, a couple of carrots, found a little sad sweet potato in the cupboard. We're going to throw her in there, onion, garlic, and all I need to do is put this stuff on to roast, which means I need to get a tray. That'll do. That'll do, pig. Okay, so down to the actual point of the video, because don't worry, it's not a cooking video. What did I learn in April? 3 things. I mean, firstly, just to say that April was kind of a roller coaster month in terms of life stuff. I'm looking for my vegetable peeler, sorry. Where are you? Here you are. She's here. She's here. Okay, so the first thing I learned, so probably the most fun, joyous thing that I learned this month, is that I could talk to people in real life, in person, about my writing. Now, obviously that sounds like a really simple, straightforward thing. Why is that something I only just learned this month? Well, it's because prior to this month, or last month now rather, I hadn't really talked to anyone I know in my day-to-day life. I didn't really talk about it with people I worked with, friends. I talked to my partner about it when he listened to me, and I mentioned it to my dad, of course, who's in one of my videos, but I hadn't really sort of openly started talking about it, and I think that I actually felt like a little bit embarrassed, a little bit self-conscious about saying it, that people would think that it was silly to be writing or to have this kind of dream of doing something with my writing, that people would think it was like a little bit daft, basically. And I think that that held me back from doing it. But once I did tell people at the villa, I realised that those things weren't true. There was nothing silly about it. And I have to say, of course, if someone else were to tell me this information, I would never think it was silly for them. This was something about how I feel about myself, right? My self-consciousness. Anyway, I realised that I can do that. I can talk to people about it and it's fine. They may or may not be interested in it, and that is also okay. If they're interested, great, love to chat more. If not, also cool, you know? I don't expect that everybody will be like, oh my God, can I read your stories or whatever? That's fine. So it felt really good to have it kind of out there for me from a personal perspective. So that was the first thing. The second thing that I learned was that I don't really know what I want. And what I mean by that is this month I have had, or rather I have been confronted with more acutely a kind of career crisis. So as you know, if you've watched my videos before, I am an academic and I work as an academic, working in social science research, and I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I'm passionate about the things that I do for my job. However, I don't have any job security, so I'm always working on temporary or short-term contracts. I don't have a permanent position as a lecturer or a professor or anything like that. So this lack of job security is really stressful, and that was especially stressful this month. Oops. And facing this crisis also caused me to reflect on what I want my writing to do. Because I think even though at the start of the year, I started to say, okay, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to try to publish it, although how, still not clear, more on that later. I didn't really have a clear vision for like, how do I want this to fit in with the rest of my life? And I think that I had somewhere in the back of my head, like an idea of, yeah, this could be a thing. This could be a job in a way. But that really remained really vague and fuzzy and was not kind of articulated in any detail. And I kind of thought, well, I'm just going to start writing the stories first and worry about that later. But this thing with my work made me think about it and think, well, what actually do I want this to be? What role is this going to play in my life and in relation to my work? Sorry, I just need to make sure that I don't cut my hand off. And the answer is, I still don't know. But importantly, I am now thinking about it in a more serious and concrete way than I was previously. And this leads me to the third thing that I learned this month. Possibly one of the hardest lessons so far, but also one of the most constructive. And I have to thank Emma Bennett for this one, because this came out of the conversation that I had with her last week. And I think if I hadn't have spoken to Emma and been thinking about what she said, then I wouldn't have come to this conclusion. So basically, one of the things that Emma said was, well, two things. She said, firstly, as a writer, you need to start building your brand as an author right from the start. Don't wait until you've done all the writing, which was kind of what I've been doing, right? Build a brand from the start, because you have yourself, there's something to start from already. So that was one point she made. And then the other thing is that Emma asked me, why do you write short stories? And I said, well, it's because I love short stories. I love writing them, but I also like reading them. And I said in our conversation, I don't know if there's a market for them. So after that conversation, I thought, I should know that, right? So I went and did a bit of research. And by research, I mean Googling and Reddit searches, not proper research. And I found out that basically it's very, very difficult to market short stories. There's not really a market for them. And that it's extremely difficult for new authors to publish a short story collection. And I can absolutely see this now that I think about it. It's obvious, because one of the things that I said to Emma was, when I see short story collections and anthologies in bookstores, they're always collections of short stories that have been published many, many times, or by authors who are very well known, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because that's what sells. So this left me in the situation of thinking, well, what do I actually want to do here? Now, of course, if I go down the self-publishing route, this doesn't matter that much. I can just self-publish my collection of short stories. Although it still matters, because you still want people to read it and buy it, but it takes away one barrier of getting an agent or getting through to a publisher, right? So what are the options then? And the things that I read said most people try to get a novel out first, and then more established authors are then slightly more likely to get a deal on a short story collection, but still looking unlikely. And then the other option is that people publish their individual short stories in literary magazines, or enter them into contests and competitions. So this latter option is more appealing for me. It still offers absolutely not really a likelihood of getting published as a collection, okay? But it's appealing for me to submit individual short stories because it means you don't have to have a collection ready and curated. You're able to send off your individual stories, and maybe they get put together in a collection later or something like that. But the point is, you can send your stories off. There's also less gatekeeping from what the very cursory research I've done for literary magazines and competitions as opposed to publishing houses, right? So I went and looked for literary magazines to submit to. The New Yorker is the kind of top one, for example, and you can just send your piece of fiction directly to them, and there are some conditions that are outlined. But the point is that you don't need an agent to do that, and you also don't need to have published anything prior. And then there are some magazines that are focused specifically on first-time emerging authors, some that are focused on women authors, some that are focused on other underrepresented groups, some that are focused on the horror genre in particular. So I started to look into this, and I started to think that this is a feasible option for me, and I started to feel excited about that. So that is the third thing that I learned this month. As I said, I have Emma Bennett to thank for that. So thanks, Emma. You prompted me to start getting my house in order, so to speak. It was obviously a bit of a blow to find out that the chances of getting a short story collection published as a new author are basically zero. Now, it's not unheard of. I happen to know someone who has published a debut short story collection, but the chances are very, very small. And that was like a little bit crushing to discover. But also, I'm really glad that I discovered it now. And I'm really glad that I have a clear idea of how I want to move forward, rather than just thinking I'm going to do all my writing first and think about this later. Because this means that I can actually start polishing some of the stories I've already got and start sending them off to different places. And that's quite exciting, right? So that is everything I learned in April. Still got my onion to chop, but I will wish you a good evening, morning, and so on. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. But before you go, before I start crying from the onions, if you like this video, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to follow my writing journey with all the bumps along the way.